Welcome to the Aegance Offscript Podcast, where we talk to industry leaders who share their stories, insights, and lessons unfiltered and unscripted. I'm your host, Lawrence, and today we're joined by Angelo, who wears many hats. He is the CEO of ProfWeb, a firm providing consulting, training, coaching, mentoring, and research services. Angelo is also the founder of thoughtleader.info, a content and reflection platform, as well as the executive director of IMSA, the professional body certifying consultants and coaches in South Africa. In this episode, we're going to dig into how Angelo is thinking about scaling his IP, navigating credibility and certification, and building learner engagement, and what's next for ProfWeb. Welcome, Angelo. Really good to have you here.
Thanks a lot, Lawrence. Good to be here.
So I've obviously positioned the multiple roles that you currently hold. Perhaps for the sake of our viewers, you could give us a little bit more context around each of those.
Basically, I have over 45 years of business experience, excluding my entrepreneurial days as a youngster. I actually started trading at the age of 13, so it was a long path, given the universities and the military training and the work I did in the military for electronic codification and cataloging, and then moving after my degree into IT, because my degree was pure maths and applied maths or theoretical physics, and jumped in headfirst into the technology race. I was involved in major projects like SAPONET, the first digital bank in South Africa, which was Telebank using ATMs. And then I moved on into my own business for a while, importing and distributing computers. Some of the most famous brands like Atari, Amstrad, Sinclair. And then I was bought out twice, once for the distribution company and once for the maintenance and service company. Then I got into consulting. That was my first touch in consulting with Deloitte as a senior consultant. And my first major project in Deloitte was the corporatization of Transnet, which was in itself a very interesting project. After a couple of years with Deloitte, I was actually offered a job by Transnet themselves, got into the digital space, digital marketing, internal service marketing, very interesting areas which were not that popular at the stage, so quite uncommon. And from there on, I moved over to other areas, acting as a CIO, then heading up IBM's SAP consulting division, and moving on from there into major client automation. I won't mention the companies, but major forestry and paper product suppliers. And from there, my career took a turn to spreading out from consulting to coaching to training. I started adding those products around about 2000. And I've been doing that ever since, with a small stint for a pension fund as the CIO. And beyond that, consulting again to corporates, listed corporates, blue chips, internationals, and also training internationally and coaching internationally. So that's the background.
Yeah, super interesting, and a host of experience there to be able to pass on to others. Looking over your career, Angelo, how has your vision changed or evolved? But if we focus in on ProfWeb as well, how does that vision tie in with what you're looking to achieve with ProfWeb?
Okay, so the vision hasn't really changed. I think I've just gotten older over time, because the vision was more or less established in the year 2000. And I established a number of digital platforms, which in many ways were as frustrating as rewarding, because of the quality of support and people handing over and losing the continuity of the platforms and so on. But the getting involved in both corporate and entrepreneurs, which are totally different markets. The corporate market is the one that can really afford to pay the fees that professional consultants and coaches can charge or should charge at that level. Whereas entrepreneurs cannot. So entrepreneurs have to be dealt with in a different way. with digital delivery, masterminds, and group activities. So I would say the vision of having a digital delivery platform has never gone away. It's never been fully realized.
How are you balancing your legacy with the need for ongoing growth?
Okay, if we talk legacy, at my age, I would have liked my son to follow on in my footsteps, but he's not really interested in the market. So I've tried many times to get partners in, people who share the vision with me, who can actually handle the volume of activity and so on, and for me to carry on doing what I'm really good at, which is delivering content and coming up with new ideas and research. So that's where we are now.
And if you had to define the next chapter for ProfWeb in one sentence, what would that be?
I don't know if I could in one sentence, but let's try. The next chapter would be a partnership with younger individuals who are looking for mentoring and experience sharing, and who can handle the digital platforms on ProfWeb's behalf as a partnership.
If we shift our focus into sort of strategic changes and innovations, I mean, have there been any innovations in training, in delivery, or in accreditation that has surprised you?
I wouldn't say it surprised me, but the speed at which AI is coming in to all the business areas has been quite, I wouldn't say unexpected, but quite shocking in terms of the pace at which it's been delivered. And I also did some research recently on AI, and one article I came across more or less shadows my experience, which is that there's about 90,000 tools out there, and they keep growing, and 90% of them don't deliver. They make promises they can't keep. So you'll end up being constantly bombarded. I worked out I'm getting at least 20 emails a day on AI or AI-related issues. So while AI promises to help with the course development and course delivery, I've found that the human touch needs to remain in order to make it real or keep it real.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the unique balance that needs to be struck between AI and human, always keeping the human in the loop. How, in your experience, have you found learners or your clients have responded to the AI shift?
Well, that's interesting. I think they look at what's delivered rather than what AI is doing. And there's basically two types of learners. There's the learner who wants to learn how to use AI to deliver content, whereas there's the learner who wants to have the best possible experience in the content, which is the training and exercises and so on. So I've found that a lot of the people that I engage with, especially in the corporate, well, both corporate and entrepreneurial market, are actually keen to find out more about AI and how it can help them, as opposed to demanding AI delivery. So I think the two are separate. The one is how you develop the content. The other one is how you deliver the content. And I've found some horrible glitches in AI delivery. A friend of mine was using a LinkedIn automator, and it really produced rubbish. So I remember the quote that someone said: AI will not put you out of business, but your competitor using AI will put you out of business.
Yeah, that's a very interesting quote. And in terms of the research that you alluded to a few moments ago about 90% of AI tools not yielding positive results, are you referring to there was a study done by MIT recently where they suggested that 95% of AI pilots are failing. Is that the one that you are referring to?
No, that isn't the one. It was a LinkedIn post by somebody that I picked up because I have been doing a lot of research on AI. But I would say my personal experience has borne that out as well. Because I've bought a few AI tools myself, and some have been really good and some have been awful. And then what you find is that not only do they sell you an AI tool, but they try and sell you something else immediately afterwards before you even realize the value. And that's actually quite irritating.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be irritating. I think it's crucial to first and foremost understand the strategic direction that a company is going in, and what are the pain points or what are the blockers that are hindering them from reaching that strategic milestone and trying to bolt AI tools around that direction rather than just selling, solutions.
Also, dead-end tools. I find a lot of the tools that are being sold are dead-end AI tools, and either they don't improve them at all, or they try and upsell you onto some horrendous digital subscription, let's call it that. And then you land up with a situation where the tools in dollar terms or euro terms are too expensive for use by African-based consultancies and trainers, of course. So what you find is that you're spending so much on tools that you can't really make a profit at, let's call it African rates. So you got to go to charging international rates, which a lot of Africans cannot afford. So it's a bit of a dichotomy.
And what strategic changes have you had to make to stay relevant in today's market, given the constant shifting of the market itself?
Okay, so it's not really a change because my approach has been lifelong learning. And I've kept in touch because I have an IT background. I've kept in touch with digital platforms and digital delivery and digital tools. And the only thing that's changed is what are you researching? So, for example, Microsoft has brought out Copilot, and to be quite honest, I haven't really found it to be that great at delivering things. I think it's geared more to the corporate market. Some of my corporate clients have told me that they've used AI Copilot on spreadsheets, and it's done a wonderful job. But you can't just keep spreading yourself out so thin that you are trying to AI everything, even if AI is not a verb. But what has changed is the use of the tools. So instead of using 4, 5, 6 tools, you're now having to use about 20 tools. And I must share where I am. As you get older, you become more resistant to learning new things just for the sake of learning them. I learn fastest when I apply something. But just imagine applying 6 tools versus 20 tools. The spread is a lot bigger.
If we cast our eyes internally at ProfWeb, are there any systems that you built to help scale ProfWeb more reliably, especially as more of your courses are moving online?
Yes, we built an LMS system. We've built a content platform. We built a booking platform. Unfortunately, they are all on different websites, and integrating them has been quite difficult. And the management of the websites is actually quite a big job because they're all hosted on WordPress technology. The challenge I have with WordPress is you've got to keep at it continuously. And I'm not talking about adding content, it's about maintaining the platform. Because WordPress was originally built as a blogging platform, and it's been hybridized to do what everybody's doing now with about 3/4 of the world's share in websites. But it's still not an ideal platform. So that makes it very difficult to invest in technology and make it, let's call it self-managing, as opposed to software as a service, which is a bit more expensive, but sometimes worth the irritation or the cost.
Sure. And which of those systems that you built have proven to be the most valuable for you?
The learner management system has been the one that has produced consistent, even though low revenue. And I haven't really paid much attention to it over time, but it's the one that has proven to address a particular need, which is why it was built. And that is that a lot of professionals who are looking for courses that we deliver can't attend live sessions at the same time. So you need a cohort of between 10 and 20 people to make it viable. Whereas online, they can do self-paced learning, and it works. Even with occasional sales and no, let's call it focused marketing, it's still selling.
And how would you say that you're able to maintain quality and accreditation standards whilst customizing that content for your clients?
Okay, so that's a fairly different issue. If you look at people who trust advisors and coaches, there's actually 2 dimensions that make up trust. The one is competence and the other one is integrity. And they break down into other components. But certification is something that builds an external view of your competence and potentially your integrity, because your clients are giving references during the certification process. So ProfWeb has numerous certifications. The one is In consulting, the next is in coaching. That's as delivery, um, irrespective of technology. And the third one is an accredited training provider of the institute. And I would say they're all tied together to give you a multidimensional delivery capability and also the let's call it the social proof that's in the 7S model, which is an expansion of the 4P model of marketing. So certification helps a lot with proof. And of course, we have references across the world which are sterling. So that helps a lot as well. We haven't really taken full advantage of them, to be quite honest.
And how would you say that your client acquisition channel has changed, moving away from that face-to-face engagement now to a more sort of digital and global world?
That's also an interesting question because the face-to-face activity tends to be both more high-paying and takes up, it's basically time for money transactions. They are still the highest income earners in overall revenue. The move to digitization has allowed for more flexibility in delivery and also focus on building content that can be reused, whereas a lot of coaching and consulting is for the particular client at the time. You cannot actually coach a client using digital platforms only. I don't believe that's possible.
Yeah, I'd imagine you'd have a far greater impact if you were dealing with the person face to face.
And also their personal problems or challenges or growth objectives or whatever it is. You can deal with a group, as I said, with entrepreneurs. You have to deal with a group, otherwise they'll be paying fairly high rates, which is the corporate rates, and they can't afford them. So you'll end up with a coach being under pressure to deliver according to value, and you land up with an entrepreneur wanting more value because of the price or the fee. So the group coaching becomes a sharing platform, a mechanism for entrepreneurs to share with each other and for the coach or coaches. I like to work with more than one coach in a mastermind to actually deal with each individual as much as they can, but the sharing platform says, I've seen a similar problem to that. How did that person solve it? Or how does that person need to deal with it? So it's a lot more about sharing and common ground.
And what's been the most surprising way that a client has found you in the past?
I wouldn't say it's that surprising, but I would say that most of my business comes by word of mouth. And I've had two fairly major engagements coming through references, and I would say that was a surprise. When I was employed in the pension fund probably 20 years ago, I got a reference about 12 years ago from the CEO to another corporate client. And from there, I got a reference from the CIO to another person who used to be the chair of the same organization. So those were really golden opportunities that came about as a result of work well done.
And what would you say is the biggest challenge that you're currently facing in terms of converting interest into a paid learner or a subscriber?
I would say there's a challenge before that, and that is to get the platforms and the exposure out there to various clients, given that I'm fairly reactive in my approach to marketing at the moment, as opposed to what a lot of people are promising, which is a proactive approach. So the most difficult thing about converting people could be the fact that I'm consulting to other people about their messaging, and I'm not doing that much work on my own messaging. You know, the shoemaker's children don't have shoes is the old adage. So, while I know what I need to do and I know what's missing, I often spend more time looking at my clients' needs than my own.
So Angelo, when you are launching a new course or a new product, a new certification, whatever it may be, how are you getting the word out there that, here's something new that you should consider?
Okay, so it's very much manual activity, manual posting to social media. I use two forms of social media primarily. The one is Facebook and the other one is LinkedIn. And also email contacts. So I search through databases and contacts and I send customized emails with the documentation. And a lot of the documentation or let's call it marketing content is developed using tools like Canva.
And have you ever considered building out a partnership base to assist you to seed a market and grow?
I've probably considered that for something like 30 years because I've always been good at generating content and intellectual property. What I've found stands in the way of partnerships. I've had a few successful ones. They've been fairly ad hoc and based just about entirely on integrity as opposed to a contract. And I'll come back to the quality of the contract just now. It's very difficult to find partners who are both interested in what you do, the way you do it, and are prepared to put the effort and the time into realizing the intellectual property you've handed over. So coming back to the contract, I'm constantly inundated with people sending me non-disclosure and non-circumvention and non-whatever agreements. And I found that they're actually not worth the paper they're written on. Because if someone has no integrity, they can bypass anything they want by some convenient route. Whereas the most successful partnerships I've had have been word of mouth. Unfortunately, one of my partners passed away a year ago. It's reality when you get to my age. But I've had probably 4 successful partnerships in my career, which really turned into big money. The challenge is finding those kind of people who are now younger than I am, at least 20 years younger, because they've got a longer career outlook than I have.
Sure. And if we focus in on those 4 partnerships that you mentioned were big successes in your past, what was it about them that made them successful?
Okay, we've mentioned integrity, so we won't go back to that. Integrity is a must. But the first partner I'm thinking of was an exact opposite to me. He was a marketing sales guru. He came out of a corporate environment with a product manager, and the corporate decided to dispose of the products because they couldn't make them work for them. And we took him over and made a ton of money out of it. In today's world, we're talking multi-millions. And we got to the equivalent of a multi-million turnover in 3 months, just because we were so complementary. I did basically all the, let's call it technical work, imports, letters of credit, staff management, finance, and he just focused on marketing. And we trusted each other. He gave me signing authority on the company. I never crooked him. Another partnership I had was with an individual where we had a word of mouth agreement again. He reached out to me after he left his corporate employment, and we agreed to split all the interventions in a particular area 50-50, and there was never an issue about it. We even flexibly adjusted what we were doing based on who put the most effort into that contract at the time, and we split the effort based on our experiences and capabilities. So, for example, he was a bit older than me. I actually trained him up in digital use and brought in my methodologies, and he was really good with people. He was. We used to call each other. I coined the term. I said this individual was the nice coach, and I was the tough coach, and it worked very well.
Yeah, super interesting. And are you in a space right now where you're looking to grow more partnerships?
I would love to, because if I'm realistic about where I am now, I have a medium-term outlook as opposed to a long-term outlook. I have multi-million rands worth of intellectual property that would go nowhere if I stopped working or stopped the company, which would be a real pity because it can be used to somebody else's advantage. I am looking actively at partnerships and busy working on some, but you never know if it's going to work out until it gets done.
And if you could pass on some advice for our viewers around establishing partnerships and your experience thereof, what would you say generally causes friction in a partnership, and how do you navigate that?
I actually developed a concept document for partnerships in consulting, and my last comment was, why should it work? And that's everybody giving a bit of themselves. Why should it not work? And I used one word, greed. Which actually goes to a lack of integrity, wanting more than you're worth and wanting more than your share. The other thing I can mention, other than the technical side of the partnership, is the complementarity, if there's such a word, of complementary nature is probably the better way of putting it, of the people that you partner with. So you need to have an all-round group of skills. You can typically get multi-dimensional capabilities with 2 people who are polar opposites, Otherwise, you're typically looking at up to 4 partners who have the full range of skills. It's people skills, technical skills, driving skills, innovation skills. But as I said, you can get it with 2 people. I've found that happens. So using personality profiling, which I do, I tell people look for a partner who is a polar opposite, or at least very much an opposite to you in terms of strengths. And then you've got to take integrity and word of mouth and commitment and background and references, all those things into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really sound advice. If we take a step back and look at ProfWeb a little bit more from a macro view, what would you consider to be ProfWeb superpowers? Meaning, what are the practices that have consistently worked for you?
Okay, so again, it took a bit of navel gazing to get to that answer. One of the things we do extremely well, and we have done well, is solve problems. So if a client has a problem, we find a way to solve the problem. If a client has a need to get to a particular point in their life, maybe as an executive, we come up with the either customized training or the customized coaching to help address that need. So it's good old value proposition delivery all along. And we can honestly say we've never had a client, unless we walked away from the client, that was dissatisfied with our delivery. We've had some minor glitches where people start nitpicking rates at the end of a contract, and then you just need to be ready to walk away.
And on the flip side of my question, what is it that's keeping you up at night? What are the recurring frustrations?
Well, one of them is technology delivery, digitization, all related, because that's the only way you can scale a business which is founder led. And while you can give as much advice as you want, you can't get away from it until you have those partners you're looking for, or you subcontract them, or you digitize them, and you become. And my target is 90% digital, 10% human, as opposed to 100% digital.
And if you could wave a proverbial magic wand and remove one of those frictions, what would it be?
It would be stable, affordable, and when I say affordable, cost-effective digital delivery platforms. Because when it comes to the inputs to those delivery platforms, we have all the skills and the content to last another few years. The digitization, and there's stages, digitalization. We want to have both, which is a digital presence, automated marketing, automated delivery, but stable, reliable, and easy to use. A lot of people forget about ease of use, the user interface.
Yeah, makes sense. And if we look ahead, Angelo, let's say the next 2 to 3 years, what new markets or offerings excites you the most?
I actually like AI as a concept, but it excites me in the way that I mentioned earlier, and that is where people are able to use AI and other technologies, because that's not the only technology available. We use Microsoft every day, just about, and that's even though it's got Copilot, most of it is not AI. It's really getting to the point where we teach people, we partner with people who can actually use technology to better their lives. So one of the things we want to leave behind as a legacy is being able to step back and help, especially entrepreneurs in Africa, to realize their dreams.
Yeah, I mean, you raise a very important point about legacy. It was the next question that I wanted to ask you was, in terms of your legacy, what needs to happen for that legacy to stick?
And again, they're all related. The questions are good questions, and they are related. So for the legacy to stick, I've got to find people who say, I'd love to partner and learn from you. This is what I'm prepared to put into it. This is what I need out of it, which we have. We have the content. We've got to digitalize the entire platform successfully, as opposed to, I would call it part digitization. Make it easy to use, and for me to be able to delegate as opposed to do, which is a proper leadership role. It's impossible if you don't have, people talk about delegation, but they forget that in order to delegate, there's actually a human resource framework that talks about it. You've got to have reliable, competent, and willing people, people willing to learn and willing to do. If you don't have those, you can delegate till you're blue in the face and just get frustrated.
And how would you measure legacy beyond financials?
Its impact. The legacy beyond financials is where somebody else can come and take the intellectual property we have. And the corporates have got access to this. So I'm looking more at entrepreneurially facing legacy, which is to create a platform and people who can help entrepreneurs succeed. That's my aim with the legacy. And the legacy is also to leave something to my family that has value, because the difference between self-employed and entrepreneurship is that a self-employed person pays their own salary if they're lucky, whereas an entrepreneur creates something of lasting value.
Yeah, that's really well put. How do you see the consulting and training landscape changing across Africa in the future?
That's also an interesting question, because I have done the research. Let's go to consulting first. The consulting landscape has changed dramatically because clients can do a lot of self-service using AI tools. Whether the results they're getting are good or not, it enables them to do at least the discovery phase of a consulting assignment themselves. And then they come loaded with questions and insights which you don't even know before you engage with them. So talking about Africa, the challenge with Africa, besides the advantage of having the largest growing population, so that means people who are growing in a digital economy, is economies of scale. Africa hasn't been notable for, let's call it grand scale ideas, with some notable exceptions. So the depth of the market in Africa is quite shallow until the African offering becomes a world-class offering. Now, that comes back to how do I see it going in future? I think especially the solopreneurs are now able to compete with the larger firms internationally using digital platforms. So that's the one big change that I see. So competition landscape changing, also the population demographics changing in Africa specifically, and Africa becoming able, if they're willing, to compete with other world players. We've already seen China become the factory of the world. So I think everybody's so far behind China in that sense that they can't really compete because of scale. On the coaching side, I don't see things changing that much except for clever coaching automation tools. Again, could be AI, it doesn't have to be, where there's a concept that I developed 20 years ago called self-coaching. You actually say, well, I would like to develop my influence capabilities. So you do a search in your database or using AI, whatever the tool is. What are the readings and teachings and videos that I need to watch, read, engage with regarding this topic? And then the tool can set you a curriculum using AI or other technology that says you're going to have to do this. It'll take you 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 6 months, whatever it is, and here's your pathway. Then you're engaging fully with digital platforms. And then, of course, one of the things that I really like, and that's something that's changed in my delivery as well, using the learner management system, which combined with the content management system, is a way of getting people to self-inform. You can have a hybrid delivery model where you offer a number of hours of mentoring alongside the training or the coaching, which doesn't really put a heavy burden on the coach. And you allow the concept of a flipped classroom to take place, which is where you say to them, right, you've read this material, do you have any questions? I don't come prepared for any delivery at all. But if I see a need to cover something new, then I can pick it up from my database. So that's an interesting approach, and it's the approach that I like because it puts less time for money pressure on the coach, but makes the impact that much higher.
And if we look at your journey over the last 20, 25 years, what have been some of the big surprises that you've experienced along the way, whether it's good or bad?
It's actually interesting, but the biggest surprise has been the power of referral. You often say, can you give me a warm referral? And when you ask someone to do it, it's really not worth much because they're going to say, well, I'll bear it in mind. I don't think of anybody who could use your services. Whereas I would say 80% of my high performing business has been by warm referrals. People who weren't asked to refer, but actually thought of me when they were looking to solve a problem or to deliver something or to fix a problem or to coach an individual. It's been primarily word of mouth.
And what win are you most proud of?
There's actually quite a few. I've spent up to 11 years with some clients, 8 years with others. And when I get a referral letter that actually says that I went above and beyond what the client asked, and I was always available and always willing to do things and never taking money for something of no value, I would say those are my proud moments, but there's quite a few of them in my career. The moments I was not that proud of was taking corporate jobs on that I didn't like, because I had a lifespan in corporate of about 2 years, and I got to the point where I told people I'm unemployable by a corporate as an employee, and I had to realize that because I was such a change agent that I would become unpopular internally, whereas externally that's exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, super interesting. And Angelo, for our viewers who want to get in touch with you or connect with you, where's the best place for them to do that?
I would say email is probably the best. If you let the members, the people who are watching the podcast or listening to the podcast, know how to spell my name, which is Angelo Kehayas. I happen to be the only person on LinkedIn with that name. So I always tell people, look me up first and connect, because you might have 6 people with the same name as you. That's one way. The other way is to send an email to me at Kehayas, which is Kehayas at ProfWeb.net. And I will respond to any valid queries and whatever with all my details. They can talk to me on WhatsApp, contact me by phone, whatever they want.
Excellent. Well, Angelo, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. It certainly has been a very interesting conversation. I feel like there's a ton more questions that I could ask you with all of your experience and your wealth of knowledge. Perhaps we save that for round 2 at a later stage, but thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for hosting me. It was a pleasure.
Cheers, everyone.